How would you describe the tone of this visual? This is a turtle swimming across a coral reef that has been bleached due to climate change. The tone of this visual, for me, is it invites anger or frustration. It's a somber one because to me it sort of says, well, what's been done about this? How many times do we have to hear about coral bleaching before something actually gets done? Hence frustration. I could also be feeling a sense of injustice for the poor turtle, for nothing happening to the reef to save the reef, or insufficient amount happening to save the reef. There's lots of different tones associated with this visual. This is section 2, Knowledge and Skills for Analysing Persuasive Tests, and this lesson is on tone and tonal shift. What's in this lesson? Talking about tone, tonal shift, how to analyse tone, and introducing a tone chart to assist you with identifying and describing tone. Relevant study design points: identify, analyse and apply the language used by the author to position or persuade an audience to share a point of view using tone, intonation, volume, pacing, pausing and stress used when presenting a point of view in audio and or audio-visual tests, because tone is not restricted to written texts. It's present in audio and it's present in audio-visual and visual, like we have just seen. So what is tone? Tone is the attitude of an author towards the subject or issue that they're discussing, how they sound. It can be powerful, very powerful, persuasive strategy. It can be written, visual, still image, like photograph, cartoon, audio, and audio-visual text. They all have tone. Tone in written and visual texts is created by the language and the pictures used. A visual integrated or embedded into a main written text may have a different tone to that of the written text, so you need to be careful. It might not necessarily reinforce. A cartoon may utilise a humorous or satirical tone about an issue, while the written text may utilise scary statistics or facts to create an ominous or warning tone, which attempts to warn the audience of the possible dangers of ignoring workplace safety requirements. Now, we know that tone is the attitude or feeling conveyed by the language and style of writing or speaking. Be careful though. Tone fits within our big picture question. How do these language features, visuals, and different forms combine with an argument to persuade an audience? Don't make the mistake of writing an entire paragraph on tone or feeling you have to start every sentence with something about tone. Think about how it works together. When we analyse tone in audio and audio-visual texts like videocasts, news clips, etc., we can actually hear the tone that's used. And these are connected to the voice and the volume and the person speaking's intonation. If a humorous tone is included or used in an interview or a podcast, laughter might indicate this really obviously. Sometimes pauses around key spoken words can also emphasise tone. And in audio-visual texts, body language, such as hand gestures, eye contact, and facial expressions, can all enhance tone. Now, in section 4 about point of view oral presentations, you need to know about what tone you will use when you speak. What is tonal shift? A tonal shift occurs when a tone changes from, say, friendly to ominous within the text itself. So a text may have more than one tonal shift, but tonal shifts are not necessarily in every text. Tonal shifts are deliberately constructed by an author and are often used to introduce a new point or a piece of evidence in an argument in order to prompt or elicit a certain reaction from their intended audience. For example, they might want to shock listeners into action or reassure readers that an institution watchdog is actually fulfilling their responsibility. Tone and tonal shifts may be easier to identify in audio and audio-visual text because of how the speaker sounds, or how the change in tone comes after a pause, or it may be signalled or signposted by hand gestures or facial expressions in a video. How do we analyse tone? Key takeaways here are: identify tone by asking yourself, how does the author sound? Even if it's in a written text, does the author sound angry? Does the author sound frustrated? Number 2, comment on the vocab, the sounds or the gestures or the facial expressions that create this tone, depending what sort of text you've got and what you've got to work with. Then 3, comment on how the tone helps position the intended audience to agree with the author's point of view. When you're analysing tone, try to use specific adjectives and avoid just writing the really general ones like neutral. Instead of writing neutral, you could write measured or calm. One big thing, do not invent tones or tonal shifts. Use this tone chart that we've provided in this lesson to help you identify tone in persuasive texts. And you can find examples of sentences, analysing tone, and sentence starters in section 3. This activity asks you to analyse tone in a persuasive text. You need to follow the link to the conversation article below and watch the embedded video of Tanya Plibersek talking about the Great Barrier Reef. Then answer the following questions to complete the activity. Question 1, how does Tanya Plibersek sound? And because you can hear this, it might be a bit easier than reading a main text. 2, what vocab, sounds, gestures or facial expressions contribute to creating this tone? And 3, how do you think her tone helps position the intended audience to agree with her point of view? Now, in the SAC, VCA has, in their sample lessons on what to do, etc., they advise that you watch the video twice, audio-visual, before answering the questions. So here's my analysis of that short video posted by Tanya Plibersek. First question, how does Tanya Plibersek sound? So to me, I think she sounds reassuring. She's coming across as trustworthy, like a protector. And it's like she, representing the Labor Party, of course, don't forget there's a dual purpose here, she knows what's going on and that her party has put action steps in place. This is hence the reassuring. When we look at question 2, what vocab, sounds, gestures or facial expressions contribute to this? Well, she maintains eye contact throughout the video, which in turn makes her seem trustworthy. She uses hand gestures, not many, to indicate that it's a global problem. I think she points up north to the Northern Hemisphere. She uses a low, steady voice. She actually doesn't use much intonation. This in turn makes her seem calm. Her suit and neutral background behind her reiterate perhaps a professional, matter-of-fact approach, suggesting everything is under control. She uses inclusive language and facts like, we've had some bad news, our scientists, we've doubled funding. She introduces an enemy, mentioning that we are dealing with feral species and invasives like the crown of thorn starfish. Number 3, the question, how does her tone help position the intended audience to agree with her point of view? Well, it appeals to the audience's need to protect the coral reef and indeed the planet. It also sells, it's got a dual purpose here, sells the government's actions. She's selling the government's actions as doing the right thing through her phrases like, we've doubled funding, climate change is the biggest risk, we've worked hard to reduce carbon emissions, get to the target 82% renewable energy by 2030. Our tone chart. So it's a really good idea to read through these. The left-hand column, questions to identify tone. For example, does the author sound neutral? And then options, measured, controlled, calm. They're all adjectives that you can use to describe this tone. It's a really good idea to learn a few of these words in the right-hand column and make sure that you use them perhaps instead of the really general ones. So does the author sound positive? Maybe upbeat, optimistic. You don't need to know all of them. Is the author or the speaker an expert? So authoritative. Does this make them sound confident? Do they speak matter-of-factly? Is the author or speaker committed to a cause? Do they sound passionate, enthusiastic, zealous? Does the author sound fed up? Are they against governments, companies? They might sound frustrated. They might be cynical, or they might be highly critical, highly negative about everything. Does the author sound angry, aggressive? Now, this will be a scale. Like, are they outraged? Are they hostile? Or are they just merely critical? Scathing is a nice word here too. I like that one. Does the author sound like they're trying to connect with the audience? Are they friendly? Amicable, another word for friendly. Benevolent, kind or well-wishing. Is the author, speaker trying to warn or scare the audience? Ominous is that big warning one. Concerned, you can see that's one end of the spectrum. Does the author sound uncertain? So does the author come across as puzzled? Are they questioning something? Are they bewildered? Are they doing this deliberately? Does the author sound like they think Australia is the best place in the world? So they might be patriotic, they might be nationalistic or jingoistic, which is that really aggressive nationalism. More tone words. Do they sound like they miss a time when they thought the local community or Australia, the world was a better place? This is often in analysis texts. So that good adjectives to describe it: nostalgic, like for a time past, wistful, they miss it, things like that. Does the author, speaker sound sad? Adjectives you can use instead there: disappointed, regretful, sombre. Does the author sound respectful? Are they open-minded, supportive, patriotic, apologetic, understanding, sincere? Do they sound smug or conceited, like they know everything? So it's patronising, condescending. Do they sound arrogant, self-righteous, preachy? And is the author trying to be funny? Now, there's all different sorts of funny. Humour, wry, satirical, ironic, sarcastic, sardonic. So if you look here, satirical, using mocking or exaggerated humour, faults and vices. Ironic is mocking as well. Humorous use of words. Sardonic is more bitter, scornful, a little bit stronger, I think. Now your turn. Read the following example, then select the adjective that you think best describes the tone. I want to share with you a dilemma I encountered this morning as I was taking my usual stroll around our picturesque park and lovely lake. Your options are: does this sound aggressive, amicable, frustrated, patronising, or you're not sure? This example, in fact, comes from the 2023 sample exam, and it sounds amicable. Doesn't sound aggressive, doesn't sound frustrated at all. It might sound a little bit patronising, but once again, we're taking one example from the whole context of the entire article. Here's another one. Read the following example, then select the adjective you think best describes the tone. Australia's climate targets must be bolstered to meet the global action needed to prevent the complete loss of the world's coral reefs. Experts warn after the 5th mass bleaching event off Queensland's coast since 2016. Does this sound A, ominous warning, B, passionate, C, aggressive, D, puzzled, or you're not sure? I think you'll agree here pretty obviously this sounds very much like it's using a warning. So it's an ominous tone. Another multiple choice activity. Read the following example, then select the adjective you think best describes the tone. We've had some bad news about the Great Barrier Reef. Our scientists have told us that we're facing a mass bleaching event. Is this A, calm, B, frustrated, C, somber, D, familiar, or you're not sure. While it does sound calm, I don't think it sounds frustrated. I think it sounds more somber or sad, like delivering bad news, rather than calm. And it does sound familiar. However, I think somber here is perhaps the best one. Okay, so in a nutshell, tone, the attitude of an author discussing subject or issue they're discussing. Written, visual, that's the still image, photographs or sketches, audio-visual texts, they all have tone. In written and visual text, still image, tone is created by the language and pictures used. Tonal shift refers to changes of tone within a text. Text can have more than one tone. Tonal shifts are not necessarily in every text. They're deliberately constructed. Often the tonal shift will come when new information is introduced. There are loads of adjectives to describe tone. Look at them all. Please just don't use 3, positive, neutral, or negative. What's coming up next? Section 3, how to write an analysis.